Today, we are changing a battery in a newer model PS3 controller. Model CECHZC2U. Now, the differences in batteries, you can upgrade to higher capacity batteries. You can replace the battery with the same specs as the battery inside the controller, and they all are different. They're not the same, depending on the model. This one is a 3.7 volt at 570 milliamps. Many of the older PS3 controller models are 3.7 at 500 milliamps. But you can find 3.7 at 1800 milliamps, 4.2 volts at 1800 milliamps, and you get the idea. So first, we will start out at taking the screws out. There's 5 screws. You just need a Phillips screwdriver. I took 4 of the screws out already, so you didn't have to sit here and watch me unscrew all these. If the screw won't come out on its own, use a magnet. I got Autobot Fix It here. It should pull right out. Now, we will pop the case from the bottom of the controller. Now here, you want to be sure these rear, right, and left flippers, I call them flippers. If you want to save yourself some time, careful these don't fall out when you're opening this up. Now, in this case, we're going to let one fall out, just so I can show people how to put one back in if yours does fall out. Okay, now we will pop the seam here at the bottom of the controller. And remember the front flippers, try not to shake that up too much so they don't fall out. And once you got that cracked open, don't open it all the way yet. Flip it over so the flippers have somewhere to rest. They are slightly snug in to a hinge, but not very tightly, so they will fall out. Keep pulling to get the entire case released, and kind of just snug it a little bit until you can fit these flippers through the back case. And we want to do that without knocking them out of the hinge. Trust me, you'll be much happier putting this back together if these are still in place. But since this is a how-to video, we're going to pretend one fell off. Darn it. And I'll show you how that goes back in later in the video. Now we will look at the battery. This battery, this stock battery is for this model PS3 controller is 3.7, 570 milliamps. And not all engineering is always the same inside a PS3 controller. As you will see here, there's tabs bolted on the battery that snap into the actual controller. You just pull it. You can see how they're molded in. Some controllers have battery holders, so any universal battery will fit nicely in there, but in this case we will be using double-sided tape because obviously our new battery is just a battery. It's not molded plastic with clips on it. Now, when undoing this plug, if it doesn't pull right out, like some of the old controllers, this one happens to be locked in. Grab a tiny screwdriver, go into the grooves here, and just push down in front of that connector, and it will pop right out on its own. You could also use tweezers or needle nose pliers. We will grab the new battery. I've already put some double-sided tape. This is super adhesive double-sided tape, so this battery has no chance of wiggling around inside there, no matter how long it sits in there. But first we will plug it in, same way we took it out. Make sure it's in there good, and in this case it will lock. And we've already got the double-sided tape on there. Just get this battery centered as possible. If you don't have the exact same replacement battery, or you have a different battery, or if you have the same battery that I have here, which I bought just for the same rating as the original, then get your double-sided tape and just make sure it's even as possible. Now, before we put the case back on, I will show you how to put this flipper back on. It has a wire that works like a tension spring, and that's what makes it come back when you press down. That tension spring is important because it only goes in one place on the controller. The rest of the controller may work, but your rear flippers will not if the spring is not positioned just right. My best advice is, you see the hinges here, and you see the molded bar, plastic bar going across the flipper, and you see the tension spring. Make sure that tension spring is fallen all the way to the left. It'll just be very much more easier that way. Hopefully you can see this. We want to insert where the molded bar is into that hinge, and you want to make sure the top part of the tension spring, there's a bottom and there's a top, if you can see that. Probably not very good, but there's one on the bottom, there's one on the top. We want the top one going underneath the front button. There's a right and left button, number 1. We want it going underneath that. Now hopefully you can get the back of your case off without having to go through this, because you'll save yourself some time. but it's not that difficult once you understand the process. I'm just showing people because it does happen. I mean, if you've never torn apart a controller before and these fall out on you, you have no idea how they go back in, maybe, unless you look it up and learn. So we have that in now, and you can lightly test it, see if it you feel some tension, and I do, and this one feels exactly the same. So now we will put the back case on. You want to be just as careful putting the case on as you took it off, because you don't want to knock those rear flippers off. Start at the top and wiggle your way in there, and it should flow nicely right inside there if you have everything lined up just right. And you can hold that tight so it don't fall apart, and test it a little bit more. Make sure everything's working good up on top there. And we will give it a little force and come around to the back while still holding it down, and make sure this pops in. And it looks good. Looks like we are all sealed up nicely. And before I test some buttons out, we will put a screw back in, just so it doesn't fall open on us, and test our buttons out. We got our front two 1 and 2 buttons, and our rear right and left number 2 buttons that feel as they should. Make sure all the other buttons work, just in case you might have hit something or moved something. Everything should feel just as normal as always, just like it was brand new. And we will test our battery. Of course, you hold the center button in, and we have a battery light. And finish putting our screws in, 4 left here, and that is it. We have replaced the battery in a PS3 controller, a newer PS3 controller. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments section. If you need, if you're not comfortable replacing your own battery, you can send me your controller with a battery. And I'll leave my I'll leave an address at the end of this video. You can either buy your battery and send it to me with the controller, or you can have me purchase it. But if I purchase it, please let me know exactly what kind of battery you want. Do you want an upgraded battery? Do you want a battery with the exact same specs? And sometimes I have original batteries taken from broken controllers that are going to be the identical replacement part of Sony. Now, they're not new, of course, but I'm sure they do have many more hours left in them. And some people just like original replacement parts. And some people, they do break their controller pretty quickly. And you have a battery that's could be good for another few years. So there is no point in tossing that out when this controller is made to replace the battery. Okay, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this and it helped you out in some way. And if you like this video, let me know. Subscribe and I'll make more.
Because the president-elect today really did let someone sit in on that briefing. That top secret
Well, any court that can interpret that duck's mind would have to have a supreme sense of humor. Just in case that duck or anybody else tries to put anything over on you, think of the Constitution like this tree. It's just like a big sturdy oak, and the trunk is the Constitution with 3 strong branches. The legislative, Congress, the judicial, the courts, and the executive, the presidency. It may not be perfect, but it's protected us for over 200 years. Guess who?
More celebrities. You need more celebrities. By the way, Billy, which celebrity endorsement of Hillary do you think put Trump over the top?
Miley Cyrus, I think. She did.
There you go. That might have been the moment. Keep doing it, man.
All right,